Okay, welcome to the Parsha Shiur. If you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com. Three very interesting things I want to share with you. The first one I'm very excited about because I think it's the most remarkable idea. Parshas Chukas begins, if you take a look at the first box, Vaydav Hashem Moshe v'Aaron lemo, Zos Chukas HaTorah shetzivah Hashem lemo. This is and the word that comes up once a year that everyone uses, quintessential chok. This is the chok. You take the parah aduma, tzmima she'ein bo mum, asher lo ola aleha ol. Okay, this is the famous parah aduma. Why is it the chok? Because there's an inherent conundrum. It's metaher the tameim and metame the tahirim, which means this is the way in which you are metaher, you purify a person who has become tome meis. And yet, the people involved in it become tome. The people who are tahor and prepare the whole thing, they actually become tome. How on earth can that be? That is the chok, zois chukas haTorah. Now, I came across the most remarkable kliyaka to comment on this, and he makes some side points which are fascinating and causes a bit of a controversy. Let's take a look. Says the kliyaka, V'altzad haremez, which means, in other words, this is halfway through this kliyaka. He explains it more of a simple pshat, but on al-sat ha-remez, which there are different levels of understanding Torah, pardas, pshat, remez, drush, soid. So al-pshat ha-remez, there's allusions. Mokum itiloim. I found some sort of explanation. Al-pi divrei bal ha-akedah, based on the words of the bal ha-akedah. Shepirish. Kol inyone ha-pora, al-darke ha-tshuva k'muvu b'sifrei. The whole concept of parah aduma has allusions to tshuva. How so? Spiritual medication is going to be very similar to physical medication. A person takes medicine, an odom chayle, mazik le'odom bari. If you've got a person who's unwell, and he's got to take some antibiotics, or he's got to take some medication, or some sort of operation, or some treatment, you do that to a healthy person, that same medication could be very harmful for him. So we see that in the physical world. Or Kamesh Amr Chazal, like the Gemara says in Tanis, Daf Yudalef on the base, Bar Beirav, the Yosef Betanisa, if you've got a yeshiva bacher, a student, a yeshiva bacher who is fasting, Kalba Leichel Sheirusa, a dog should eat his food. In other words, a person, let's say he's unwell, then he can't eat properly, then this food is not good for him, it's damaging for him. Let a dog eat the food. But normally, if you're well, this food is quite healthy for you. So you see this concept. If you jump to the next line, like the Gemara says in Yuma Daf Pei Vav Amud Beis, Heichi Domi Bal Tshuva. What is the paradigm? What is the example of a Bal Tshuva? That the exact same scenario which you slipped up on previously comes to you again. Rabbi Yehuda explains that it's referring to the same place, the same person, and the same time. Because to demonstrate that you're a proper Bal Tshuva, that you've overcome this challenge and you're never going to do it again, you've got to literally go through the same experience, the same place, the same time, the same situation. In this place and time, with the same person, you've tasted, you've experienced the Aveira, and that's what the Pasuk says in Hosea, i.e., in the place that you're not my people, in that place then you're going to tell, you've done tshuva and you're my people again. But the point is in the same place. The Shari Tshuva, Rabbi Yoina says, because of this Gemara, that a person should, it's called the Tshuvas HaMishkal, it's got to be the proper tshuva, according to this famous Gemara in Yuma Daf Pei Vav Amud Beis, that it's got to be ba'isa perek, ba'isa isha, ba'isa makom, that a person should do tshuva in their young years. Why? Because when they get a bit older, the natural passions and energies decline a little bit, and therefore it's not going to be the same Yetzer Hara which is drawing you to this Aveira, and therefore the tshuva will not be as complete. And therefore, says the Shari Tshuva, says Rabbi Yonah, that one should do tshuva in his younger years to avoid that. Now, this is where it gets very interesting. So again, what's the Kli Yakar saying? The Kli Yakar is saying that the concept of Parah Aduma is, we can understand it somewhat in the term just like of medical, physical medical intervention. Well, so too the spiritual repair is the same. That we can understand the concept that a person who's ill, his medication is good for him, but it's very damaging for a person who's well. Well, so too in the spiritual realm as well. And therefore, this whole process of the Parah Aduma is healthy for the Tomei person. It's metaher the Tmeim, but for the Tahar person, it's damaging. It's matame the Tahar person. We can understand the concept. That's his take on it. Now, he then continues with this Gemara about the Baal Tshuva Gemara. Take a look, the next paragraph. V'yesh oimrim shezeh kavonas chazal. This is the most remarkable insight. Says the Kli Yakar, that explains the Gemara in Brachas Daf Lamed Daled on Beis, which says, "B'makom shebali tshuva oimdim tzadikim gemurim ein yechodim la'amid sham." A well-known Gemara. In the place where Bali Tshuva stand, tzadikim gemurim can't get close. Bali Tshuva can't they're on such a lofty level, even tzadikim gemurim ein yechodim la'amid sham. That's what the Gemara says. Says the Kli Yakar, I can now understand that Gemara much better. Ki Bal Tshuva, habal Tshuva tzorich la'amid b'mokom asher omad sham b'rishona. For him to be a Baal Tshuva, he's got to go back to the place where he slipped up originally. If we're talking about a situation in Aveira of Arias where he sinned with a certain lady, so he's got to put himself, according to this Gemara, back into exactly the same position with the same lady in the same situation. So therefore, to fulfill this Gemara of Oisa Perik Heis Chidomi Bal Tshuva Kogoin Shebo Oisa Ma'aseh Yoda Perishman, it's got to be the same situation. Oisa Perik, Oisa Isha, Oisa Mokum, and therefore to do that, he has got to be misyached. He's got to do yichud with this lady, and then avoid doing the aveira in order to be a Bal Tshuva Gemara. And that's pshat. He says the Kli Yakar in the Gemara, B'makom shebali tshuva oimdim tzadikim gemurim yichodim la'amid bay. Why? Because this Bal Tshuva has got to stand and do yichud in this place with this lady in order to do tshuva gemara, not to do the aveira. Aval tzadik gomer also hayichud. But for the tzaddik, he can't be in the same room alone, secluded with this lady. Ki also lahavi nafshe b'nisayin. You can't go into a place of yichud with this lady. It's also to put yourself in such a situation. Nimsa sheyichud, i.e. this yichud, tahainu etzem ha-tshuva, which is the tshuva for the Baal Tshuva, matame tahirim, u'matahir tmeim. Amazing. That's how the Kli Yakar learns it. Remarkable insight. V'chein tzorich, next paragraph, v'chein tzorich kol Baal Tshuva lahatzos lekotze achron. And therefore, every Baal Tshuva has got to go to the other extreme, B'dava shechotaboy, in the area where he sinned, Kadei sheyetz l'derech hamamutza, to swing back to the pendulum to the other side. So say, for example, he slipped up and he kept eating treifas, Big Macs. So maybe he's got to go to the other side, he's not going to eat meat for the next 6 months. So in that way, that will swing back to some middle path whenever the corrective time is over. For example, when craftsmen want to work with wood, which is bent, you've got to twist it back to the other end, and therefore it will find its middle road. But for the tzaddik gamur, he shouldn't start swinging backwards and forwards, and that's what it says. You need this middle straight path. You don't need to go to extremes, and that's what it means. Al ti tzaddik harbe, al tir shaharbe. V'chein yesh oimrim shedova ze nirma behashlochas eitz erez ve'ezov el toich streifas hapara. Part of the whole procedure which the Gemara, which this part our Parsha talks about, is throwing in the eitz erez, which is the tall cedar, and the ezov, which is this lowly hyssop tree. El toich streifas hapara. Why these strange contrasts? Tahainu hashlochas haktzovos, by throwing in these two extremities, A person shouldn't be very proud and tall like an erez. Nor should he lower himself too much like an ezev. Al-Kain, hapora matame u'matahara. Therefore, the pora is matame and is matai. Kadesh l'umud menov shebinyone hatshuva yesh kama dvarim hamatameim u'mataharim ke'echad. To teach us that when it comes to tshuva, some things are matame, some things are mataher. V'hashinu ba mitzad ha'makablim ka'omer v'zeh derech nochon abara. Okay, so that's the Kli Yakar, fascinating Kli Yakar, who says that the explanation of the Parah Aduma is quite straightforward. That just like with physical maladies, that you have to take something which is very, very beneficial for the choyle, for the sick person, but a healthy person does that, it's damaging to him. Well, so too over here, this process is very beneficial for the Tomei person, it's Mataher, it's Meim, but it's damaging for the Torah person, it's Matame, the Torah person. And then he explains that you see that that's the way that tshuva works. That the Baal Tshuva has to put himself in the whole system again in order to rectify fully his Aveira. As the Gemara says, Hey Chidomi, Baal Tshuva, it's got to be Sheba Isa Maisa Liyada, Pirish Vimenu, Ba'isa Perik, Ba'isa Isha, Ba'isa Mokum. And therefore, the only way to do tshuva properly, says the Kli Yakar, is to put himself, let's say he was involved in Arias, to put himself with the same woman in the same place, and therefore overcome the temptation of Yichud. But that situation for the tzaddik is terrible because he can't be involved in it. That's the way the Kli Yakar understands Para Aduma. Okay, now the Kli Yakar was the Rav in Prague in the early 1600s. Prague have had the most greatest in our Jewish history have been the Rabbonim in Prague, the Maharal, the Kli Yakar, and later the Noda B'Yehuda. Now, the Noda B'Yehuda was 150 years after the Kli Yakar. And the Kli Yakar, the Noda B'Yehuda wrote many, many things. Of course, his famous Noda B'Yehuda. Yehuda is named after his father. His name was Rabbi Cheskel Landau. So his name is his sefer, the Noda B'Yehuda, after his father, whose name was Yehuda. And he also wrote something called the Tzlach, the Chidushim of the Tzlach. Tzion Nefesh Chaya. Chaya is named after his mother. In addition to the Chidushim of the Tzlach on various Masechtas, there's something called the Drushei HaTzlach, the Droshes. Now, the Noda B'Yehuda, also known as the Tzlach, in Droshes, this is the Musa he's giving his community in Prague in the late 1700s. Listen to this. This is in Drush Aleph in Ois Yud Aleph. Omnom. This is in the third box on the page. Ani Omnom. Ani Omer. Sherabim Ta'u B'divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Many people make a mistake in what Rabbi Yehuda says, i.e., Hechidomi Bal Tshuva, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda says, Mechav Rabbi Yehuda, Ba'isa Perek, Ba'isa Isha, Ba'isa Mokum. People make a mistake in what he means. She'ama Ba'isa Mokum, Ba'isa Isha. People think that it means that a person has got to put himself into exactly the same situation, and then hold back. Etc. I.e., that the tzaddik can't do yichud with this lady, but the Baal Tshuva can and should because he wants to achieve tshuva shlema. Ani oimer chas v'shalom lo ymakein. Says the Tzlach, what? To be misyachid with a lady and put yourself in that situation and then to hold back, in order to do tshuva? Chas v'shalom. Lo miboya bedova erva chas v'shalom lahati lebal tshuva lisyachid v'lav al divrei Torah. Yichud could be an issa d'oraisa. It's often an issa d'rabbanan, but it could be an issa Torah. People make a mistake about yichud and think that so long as nothing happens, it's okay. It's not true. The yichud itself is asa, even if nothing happens. Mitzvah haba b'aveirahu. He's putting himself in this situation. It's a mitzvah haba b'aveira. The mitzvah of tshuva that he's achieving was achieved through the aveira of yichud. How can he do it? V'adarabah. Habal tshuva tzorich lasos gedorim. On the contrary, if this was his weak spot, then he's got to put safeguards in place to make sure he does not succumb to this. Every person's got to keep away from yichud. Like I just said, people think that the issa of yichud is only if something happens. That if he he takes the yichud further and he actually does an aveira, that's when there's a problem. But if nothing happened, then it's okay, there was no violation. Not true. Also, even if he doesn't think of doing an aveira, if they seclude themselves, that is a violation of yichud. So in many situations it could be a deraisa, and sometimes it could be a drabonon. Says the tzlach, nothing doing. Now, so how do you understand the Gemara? How do you understand Rabbi Yehuda? Parsha Pshat means, in Rabbi Yehuda is, when he says that to do tshuva Gemara, it's got to be ba'isa parak, ba'isa isha, ba'isa mokum, it means, explains the tzlach, that you are so resolute, you're so determined to do tshuva, never to repeat that aveira, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is the Yodea Ta'alumos, who knows all the secrets of a person, knows that you really regret what you did, you're remorseful, that you would never do it again. That's what you need to do. You've got to be genuine, you've got to be totally remorseful. That's what it means. But not that you actually put yourself in that situation. Now listen to this. And here, he makes reference to the Kliyaka. He doesn't say his name, but he makes reference to it. Look at this in Yud Beis. V'hinei. B'tchilas boyeheina. When I came here to Prague, says the Noda Yehuda in the Drush Tzlach, tzorafti mi harabonim based in v'gozarnu shlo lahachzik misharas eishes ish bebeisai. When I came to this city, it was very common for there to be non-Jewish maids for every home, and we decreed against it. Afilu his kina b'yosef, even if she's a very old person, chutz me'nekes, apart from me'nekes, she's feeding the baby. It became a terrible piritza, a terrible breach in halacha. And they were violating halachas left, right, and center because they were over yichud with a non-Jewish misharis, with a non-Jewish maid. And we've become lax again, and I want to again decree against it that we cannot take in a misharis, a non-Jewish maid. I assume it's non-Jewish, a non-Jewish or Jewish maid, where there's violations of Issa Yichud, because we've got to be careful. The du'una rabaisai, kima based in goes maldover who is a chomor moed, and if we, the based in a decreeing against it, it's very serious. But divrei Torah yesh b'masei v'loisasei v'koloiva divrei chachomim bayom hakadmoin m'chayiv misa. In good old days, person violated the drabonon, he could be chayiv misa. So very, very interesting. A famous kliyaka interpreting the Para Aduma and making reference to this understanding of the Gemara Hechidomi Bal Tshuva, that you've got to put yourself in that situation to fulfill the words of Rabbi Yehuda, Ba'isa Perek, Ba'isa Isha, Ba'isa Malkum, and says the Tzlach 150 years later, no way. And it's not just the Tzlach who says this, there are others who say this as well. But anyway, I thought it was a fascinating starter for this evening. Now, moving on. Perek Yotes, the Pasuk says, paragraph 2, Zois Teras HaOdom, Zois HaTeira, Odom Ki Yomas Ba'el, Kol HaBo'el O'el, V'chol HaSheb O'el, Yitzma Shivas Yomim. So the simple explanation of that is, it's the halachas of Tumah, that if a person walks into a room where there is a mace, he is Tomei. He walks into a house, an Oyhel, where there is a mace, he becomes Tomei. How long for? Shivas Yomim. Now, the Gemara in Shabbos, Pei Gimel on the base, makes a famous drasha on this pasuk. Divrei Torah, ein divrei Torah miskaimim, ela b'mi shemei misatzmei olehu. Divrei Torah are only going to succeed if a person is mei misatzmei olehu. He kills himself over it, literally, which means he puts in enormous effort, he works hard. His moisen nefesh. How do I know? A person dies in the Oyhel. That's the famous drasha of the Gemara in Shabbos. Okay, so when it says Zois HaTorah Odom Ki Yomas B'Ohel, it's referring to the Oyhel of Torah, and a person to succeed in Torah has to be Meimis Atzmei Oleha. I came across an article last week, or 2 weeks ago, of Rabbi Yonason Rosenblum in the Mishpacha. He writes brilliantly always. And last week or the week before, he said something which was just, it resonated with me. I thought it was fascinating. I'll share it with you. He said something very interesting. He said that when you go to a shiva of a person you respect a lot, ask the parent, he's sitting shiva for a parent, let's say. It's worth asking him about his parents because they did a good job, clearly, in producing this person who you respect a lot. So he was talking about that concept of learning from shivas and speaking about the upbringing that the person had, etc. That was his theme. And then he mentioned a well-known personality in the Kiruv world, Rabbi Beryl Gershenfeld. He's one of the famous Kiruv personalities today, a remarkable person. He was also profiled recently in one of the magazines, the Mishpacha, I think a month or two ago. Anyway, Rabbi Beryl Gershenfeld told Rabbi Yonason Rosenblum about two situations. It was on the same theme, that often he has superstars in the Kiruv world working for him, campus rabbis. He runs a huge operation, and if he's got some superstars, he often asks their parents, how did you produce this superstar? What was the secret? So he gave two examples. One of them, the father said to Rav Gershenfeld, I'll tell you one incident. When he probed a little bit more, he said, before my son's bar mitzvah, this is the son who became the superstar, before my son's bar mitzvah, I was thinking long and hard how I'm going to impart a message to him on his bar mitzvah, that really now life is about serving the Jewish people, being moser nefesh, not being self-centered, and what can you do to help others? I wanted to sort of impart that message to him. So I decided the best way I can do this is by donating a kidney. My bar mitzvah present to my son is that I registered to donate a kidney. I did it before the mitzvah to teach him the message that he has to live a life of mesiras nefesh for other people. Number one. Number two, another father of a superstar who happens to be a Magid in a well-known yeshiva told Rabbi Beryl Gershenfeld the following story, that they would have lots of people at their Shabbos table, and one time there was a fellow who was not a religious young man, and he happened to be a vegan, and he refused to put on tefillin. Why? Because in order to wear tefillin comes from the hide of an animal, and that he's against killing animals, and therefore, so he refused to put on tefillin. So how's the Rav going to deal with this situation? He's a quick-thinking fellow. The Rav said, I'll make a deal with you. You tell me, every day, the day where you wear tefillin, I will not eat meat on that day. And therefore, you put on tefillin, you'll be saving animals, because there'll be less meat eaten. And the kid did it. He said, good deal. And after a number of months, the tefillin did its job. Somehow he decided I don't know exactly what happened, there was a happy ending. And the father was able to go back. But what a remarkable example of mesiras nefesh. You see parents live a life with mesiras nefesh. That is, there are no secrets. There's no magic bullet when it comes to parenting. Parenting, chinuch, in today's world, all the rules have changed. But one thing that we try and aspire to is mesiras nefesh, which is really what the pasuk is saying. Okay, let's finish off with a very interesting question that I heard from Rabbi Hartman. In this week's Parsha, we span 40 years. We begin the Parsha very soon after they enter the Midbar, and then fast forward 39 years, we're the last year, and sadly Miriam and Aaron HaKohen die in this week's Parsha. Says the pasuk, and this is paragraph 3, Vayeshev ha'om b'kodesh v'tomas shom Miriam. Miriam dies there, v'tikover shom. Says Rashi on the pasuk, v'tikover shom Miriam, lomanis mecha parsha mises Miriam, the parsha's Parah Aduma. What's the connection of the death of Miriam to the Parah Aduma, the beginning of the parsha? Lo melecha mak karbonis mechaprin, af misa sadikim mechaperes. That's the connection. Just like karbonis and mechaper, well, so too the death of tzadikim and mechaper. Thomas Shom Miriam, says Rashi, Af ben Ashika Mesa, she died through a Misa Nashika, that Kodesh Baruch Hu, as it were, kissed her mouth. Why doesn't it say that? It's not appropriate to say that with Miriam, but however, with Aaron Nem Al Pi Hashem Be'in Maseh, in Parshas Maseh, it does say that. Now, that's the death of Miriam. The death of Aaron is described in the next box. Let's take a look at the Pesukim. Vayisu mikodesh. They traveled from Kodesh. Vayavo b'nei Yisrael kol ha'eda Har Hahar. They came to a mountain called Har Hahar. Vayoyma Hashem el Moshe vel Aaron b'Har Hahar al gvul Eretz Edom Leimar al gvul Eretz Edom Leimar Ye'osef Aaron el Amov Aaron is now going to be gathered into his people, which is an expression of death. He's not going into the land of Eretz Yisrael. Good. Well, not good. Next pasuk. Kach es Aaron ves Elazar b'nai. Take Aaron and Elazar his son. V'ha'al oisom har and climb up the mountain. V'hafshet es Aaron es begodov. Take Aaron's clothes off. V'ilbashtom es Elazar b'nai. And then put them on his son Elazar. Aaron Yosef will mace shom, and Aaron will die there. Vayas Moshe kashetzivu Hashem, vayalu el har le'nei kol ha'edah. And they went up in front of all the people up har. Vayafshet Moshe es Aaron es begodov. He undressed Aaron. Vayalbesh osom es Elazar b'nai, and he put these big day kohen gadol on the son of his son Elazar. Vayomos Aaron shom b'reish har vayered Moshe ve'Elazar min har. 3 people went up. Aaron died, Moshe Rabbeinu and Elazar came down the mountain. Vayiru kol ha'edah ki gova Aaron, and all the people saw that Aaron had died. Vayivku es Aaron shloshim yom kol beis Yisrael, and the entire people mourned Aaron HaKohen for 30 days. Rashi famously says, kol beis Yisrael ha'anoshim va'anoshim lefi she'Aaron roidev shalom v'mata shalom ben bali meriva ben ish le'ishto. Therefore it was everyone. Kol ish Yisrael. Fine. But look at the pasuk Chavtes on the Rashi on that. Says Rashi, when it says Vayiru kol ha'edah, they all saw. What did they see? Says Rashi, Kasherol Moshe ve'Elazar yardin va'Aaron no yard. When they saw Moshe Rabbeinu and Elazar coming down the mountain, Omru heichen hu Aaron. They said, 1 second, 3 people went up the mountain, only 2 people are coming down. Where is Aaron? Amar lohem. So Moshe Rabbeinu told them, I'm sorry to tell you that Aaron HaKohen has died. Amru loi. They said back to Moshe, impossible. Is it possible that Aaron HaKohen, who stood up against the Malach, he stopped the plague, the Malach HaMoves is going to have any control over him? They showed Aaron HaKohen lying in a mitzvah, in a coffin. They saw and they believed. Ad kan Parsha Chukas. Asks Rabbi Hartman, great question. So Klal Yisrael saw Aaron HaKohen, they saw this sort of visage, this image of Aaron HaKohen dead. The question is, why did Klal Yisrael believe Moshe? Why? Because they remembered 39 years ago that this was one big bluff. How so? Take a look at the next box. Vayar ha'om ki boishesh Moshe. This is the sin of the Egel Azov. That Moshe Rabbeinu, as we remember in Parshas Kisisa, delayed in coming back. Loredis min ahar. Vayakel ha'omel Aaron vayom reilov kumas elonu Elohim. Make gods for us. Asher yelchu lefonenu kizeh Moshe ish asher helonu me'eretz Mitzrayim lo yodanu me'hoylo. We don't know what happened to Moshe. That's the famous pasuk in Parshas Kisisa. Says Rashi on that pasuk, kizeh Moshe ish. What does that mean? Kamin demus Moshe heron lehem asatan. The Satan came along, again, put up a big screen or something, and an image of a coffin of Moshe Rabbeinu appeared. So the Satan was playing games. He put up an image of Moshe Rabbeinu dead, and that encouraged the Erev Rav to do the Maisa Egel. Surely, 39 years later, Klal Yisrael would have remembered that picture in the sky of Moshe Rabbeinu dead was not true. So why, 39 years later, when Moshe Rabbeinu showed them a picture of Aaron dead, why all of a sudden they're going to believe? 39 years ago they realized it was a bluff. Why should they suddenly believe it now? Great question. And I must be honest with you, when Rabbi Hartman initially told me this question, he says, I don't know the answer. Tzorich iyun. So we could leave it there, and you can think about an answer, but he gives an all Parsha share, like on the all Parsha app. So he said, one year he asked this question, and he said, I don't know the answer. If anyone's got a good answer, email me in the answer. How come the Bnei Yisrael believed Moshe Rabbeinu when he said, Aaron died, and I'll show it to you, here's the image of him in Shemayim? Didn't Klal Yisrael realize that 39 years ago it was a big bluff? This is not true, these images, because with Moshe, he wasn't dead. He's alive and still today. So he put it out there. And he says, if anyone's got a good answer, email me. So I printed off an email. He forwarded me the email. Did he get? This is, I think, a couple of years ago. Listen to this. My name is Binyamin Luchins, I think that's how you pronounce it, and I am an 8-year-old in Passaic, New Jersey, who enjoys your Maralshi on the All Parsha app. This is Rabbi Harman. Last week, Rabbi Harman is writing in the third person, very respectful young man. Last week, Rabbi Harman asked that people sent Tirutzim why Klal Yisrael believed that Aaron died when they saw what seemed to be the same thing they had seen by the Ego when Moshe Rabbeinu did not die. That's our question. I asked a few people, and I would like to send 4 possible answers. This 8-year-old from Passaic. Number 1, my father told me that Rashi says that Moshe davened and then the image of Aaron came. Perhaps they knew that Moshe's davening would not produce a Maisa Satan. Nice. 2, my brother told me that one Medrash says that with Moshe Rabbeinu they saw an image, that's the Medrash in Shmos, but by Aaron the cave opened and they actually saw Aaron HaKohen. They saw him. Okay, he has a few more horrors on that. Answer number 3, my brother also told me that with Moshe Rabbeinu, Rashi brings 2 girsas of the Gemara in Shabbos and Daf Peites, which is the source of this. One says that they saw the Demus Moshe, and one says they saw the Demus Mitosai. But with Aaron, Rashi says they saw the bed and they saw him. So maybe that was more believable. So maybe they saw Aaron, but with Moshe they only saw a bed. Good. Answer number 4. Another brother told me, this is an impressive young man with impressive brothers and impressive father. Another brother told me that in the Yalkut Shimoni it says that with Aaron, they saw Hashem and the Malachi Asharis being maspid Aaron. And therefore that sort of authenticated it. So either way, a fine young man with some great ta'aras to answer Rabbi Hartman's question. But Rabbi Hartman was blown away with this young man. He was so excited. Okay, so let's just summarize what we've said tonight. Number 1, this is Parsha's Chukas, and the famous Zois Chukas HaTorah, the famous Parsha of the Parah Aduma, and this remarkable Kliyaka, that the Kliyaka explains, like we've said, that it's the same way as it works in the physical world, that medication is good for the sick person, but not good for the well-healthy person, and therefore we can understand the concept of Matahir Tmeim and Matamei Tahirim. We understand that concept. But in talking about that, he says that applies in the spiritual realm as well. And so too, you find something which is good for the Baal Tshuva, but it's not good for other people. And that's really what the Tshuva Gemara is. Tshuva Gemara is Heichidomi Baal Tshuva. Rabbi Yehuda says, Oisa Perek, Oisa Isha, Oisa Mokum, which the Kliyaka says means that he's got to literally put himself in that situation, and that situation is good for the Baal Tshuva, but it's terrible for anybody else, etc., etc. Says the Tzlach, Chas v'Shalom. Not that you cannot put yourself in that situation. The Isav Yichud and the situation there in Prague with lapses in this area. So a fascinating, interesting difference of opinion between the Kliyaka and the Tzlach. Then we discussed the Mesiras Nefesh, Zeis HaTorah, Autumn Kiyomas Ba'ihel, Ein Divrei Torah Miskam, Misha Memis Atzmei Oleho, and the 2 stories of Rav Gershenfeld, the kidney donor and the tefillin for the vegan. And then this death of Aaron HaKohen, how come they believed Moshe Rabbeinu, but they didn't refer back to this bluff that happened 39 years ago with the Egel. How come they believe that and not the other thing? So 4 possible answers of this young man, Binyamin Luchins from Passaic, New Jersey. Okay, Ad Kan.